Welcome everyone. Yeah, the sneak preview of us at the start there. So I'm Chris Dobbin, and thank you for joining us today on another episode of Amplify Your Brand, a series where it's the ultimate live on building a powerful brand in today's digital age. Along with myself and friend and fellow colleague and branding expert Simo on the screen there, we're here to share the expertise and help you take your brand to the next level. So whether you're an entrepreneur, small business owner, a marketing professional, or someone tinkering around with a personal brand, this live stream is a practical insight with strategies that will help you amplify your brand and stand out in the digital landscape. So please get ready, take some notes, take what you talk about today into action. And because by the end of this, you'll have a clear roadmap into building the brand that truly resonates with your brand and target audience. So thank you for joining us. Let's find another way to amplify your brand. And today's topic is all about the content strategy secret. So we're going to amplify your brand's voice. We're going to find ways to supercharge your brand's voice through a strategic content approach. People go about content in funny ways. A lot of people get to a point in content strategy development where they just have a scratch the head moment where they go, can't create content, don't know what to create, don't know how to go about it. And I guess if you are that person, then we'd love to hear from you because we have a million ideas that we can help you out with. And hopefully by the end of this session, you'll have a bunch of them that you can apply. But if you're still struggling, that's where we come in. But Tim, do you want to talk about content strategy? Because it's something that people don't think about as brand when it comes to their branding exercises and how they go. It's actually very crucial.
Yes, and it's a highly useful tool to keep attracting the audience that your brand is trying to target. It's also a misused tool at times, or not efficient in how it is used. However, it's an ongoing organic way of supporting your advertising, not advertising as such, but more marketing, because it keeps making references, it keeps presence in top of mind, it keeps people engaged with what you do, and it keeps visibility on you. It's simple as that. Because at some point, if you're constant enough, content is one of those tools that will definitely identify you or further confuse, depending on how you do it. Further identify you in the eyes of your audience. And the more you are present in everybody's eyes, even if they're not engaging, especially in today's day and age where we're kind of spectators, but not really participating live. But the fact that you're showing up in front of people's eyes just makes your presence associate with a specific type of content. And today's session is a little bit on drilling down exactly on that.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I need to be clear, a lot of this won't be a how to do it, but it will raise ideas and topics and things you need to go about building to have those assets in place to launch your content strategy and build your brand. But let's get into it. So obviously, we just want to highlight the fact that this is TUG built on our P8 branding program, which is 20 years of development in building a brand-on identity framework that encompasses the 8 sections of brand that we feel you need to use. They're called the 8 Ps, and they understand and implement a program so that you, as a business owner, can amplify your brand. And we'd love to talk about that. Today, we touch on the promotion part of this, and it really gets into a little bit of protection as well. And when you're doing what we're talking about today when it comes to brand content strategy, it's built on the other 6 elements that we've got on the screen there. So please consider that when you're coming into it. So we're going to uncover the well-guarded secrets of content strategy and how they use them to amplify your brand voice. In today's digital landscape, we're creating compelling content that resonates with your audience is more critical than ever. So your brand's voice has to be unique and has to have a unique identity that leverages its effectiveness to get you to set yourself apart from the competition. And I'm having speech therapy issues today, but we'll get there. So why have a content strategy? The art of science and crafting a content strategy not only reflects your brand, but also magnifies the impact. And the impact is probably the key to this whole process. So I'm just going to quickly overview some of the 7 things we're going to talk about today. We're going to find a way to understand your brand's essence. We're going to find hidden goals in your content strategy. We're going to look at the audience and the insights, engagement, how that helps you. We're going to talk about strategic content types and channels. This is really important when it comes to branding. consistency is something we've highlighted many, many times, and it's a silent powerhouse in this process. And we're going to talk about creating and distributing the killer content. And finally, we've done all this. We want to unlock the success metrics so you know why what you're doing is working. So let's get into the first step of this, which is understanding your brand's essence. So dissecting what makes your brand unique and how it forms the foundation of your content strategy. And the first step in this we're going to talk about is defining your brand values and mission. So we're going to explore how you pinpoint the core values, the mission statement that defines your brand purpose and identity. So we've talked about this in much earlier episodes when we went into the whole purpose. But if you don't know your mission, then you really are just floundering around, just creating funny content for no purpose at all. It doesn't connect with your brand. It doesn't feel right. It may not attract the people you're trying to attract. There's all sorts of reasons, but sort of talk me through why this is an important aspect of why we need to understand the brand essence. Like, why is your values and mission important?
Well, it all starts with the why. Thank you, Simon Sinek, for that.
Yep.
Understanding your why gives you the vision. And without that vision, your mission is diluted. It feels like a mask just overlaid. And that's where the content that is floundering, that is confusing, that doesn't position or identify comes from. It's from that lack of the purpose that sits at the core of everything your brand is meant to do. Because when you start saying and repeating the same things that the industry says, you're just creating more noise and making more industry relevant content, not your brand relevant and your position in that industry. And there is a difference.
Yes, there is. I was actually watching on Netflix a documentary on the product Juul, the alternative smoke vapor tool, and their goal was to eradicate all adult smokers from using cigarettes. But they launched their campaign aimed at kids. And that's where they went absolutely wrong, right? And if you watch the documentary, it clearly shows, and when I say kids, they're actually talking about lifestyle content, right? But the thing about the lifestyle content was it attracted the younger generation, not the older generation. And it went away from the mission. And so that content they created a whole attraction of an audience they did not want.
Right. Yes, there you go. That's a perfect
which
example.
led to the downfall of their business being where it is today. So it went from a $40 billion valuation down to well under. It's still worth a lot of money, but it's nowhere near what it was worth. It may or not even, by the end of we have this session, it may not even exist anymore. That's how bad it's got for them. But it's an example of how powerful knowing your mission and your values is, because it resonates with the right audience and will build your business, not detract and take away from your business. So
yes,
you've got to really understand that. And that leads to the next slide here, which is identifying your unique selling proposition. So distinguish your brand by identifying what sets you apart from your competitors. Now, this is probably one of the hardest things to do. Sometimes it comes naturally because you really understand your values and your mission, and you clearly know where your north point is, and you can get there. But for a lot of small businesses that if you're going into, we've talked about this, if you go into accounting or a cafe or some kind of retail store where you're going to sell sweaters and hats or whatever the case is, you're in a mass environment where anyone can buy any hat, any accountant, they can choose any cafe. Like, you've got to find your unique way to sell yourself so that people feel like, I want that experience over that one. And that's clearly what we're talking about here. So you've got to really identify what your competitors are doing and then find your voice and your version. But again, coming back to the first point, make sure it's on values and a mission statement that you can live up to and want to live up to, because otherwise you will attract the wrong people. And the reason we're starting where we are, by the way, with these few points, is because before we get into content, you need to know who you are. and you've talked about this even in last week's thing, know thyself, right? So
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
really important to know yourself.
So
Anyways,
content really is a consequence of who you are, and the vision, the mission is actually going to enable and empower your unique selling point because it ties in. It's not just something that you look at isolated and say, "Oh yeah, I'm about this," and then your unique positioning has nothing to do with what you claim to stand for.
yeah,
So, as consistency, like most things with branding, and we've talked about this particular
we'll get
point
there.
at a
Don't see preview.
back right at you. Okay.
All good. No, so we'll get to the next slide here. So once we've understood your USP, you need to then look at ways you analyze your target audience and its perception of you. So you need to always be looking at ways to gain insights into how your audience perceive your brand and uncover opportunities for alignment. Now, we've talked about this over previous episodes that if you're in technology, there's always something that's probably going to change in technology. That means you've got coming back to this and looking at different ways to leverage that opportunity. If you're in an industry where there's a certain way things are done, is there a way for you to do it differently? Like these are things that you need to look at, but you need to constantly look at ways that your audience is perceiving you and how can you adjust to that perception that's changing and create content that makes you relevant. And that's the key to that sort of part of the thing. But again, Simi, if you've got anything to add to that.
The easy example is the classical the pizza makers. There's a million pizza makers, probably 3 or 4 just around everybody's neighborhood watching this today. But Domino's has a promise and a unique selling position that is based off their mission. They deliver pizzas under 30 minutes or you don't play, and everybody knows this. It's a simple and everybody
Yep.
can repeat this mission. That's because they own that. They don't say they're the best ingredients or the most Italian. It's just the fact that they're able to put a pizza knocking on your door in under 30 minutes. Simple.
That's right. Yeah. So please explore ways that you can get your audience to perceive you in a way that you want them to. Now we're going to move to the next part of this, which is the hidden goals of content strategy. So there's secret goals that drive successful content strategies and the why they're crucial to your brand's growth. And we're going to talk about the first one here is building trust and authority. So you need to look at ways you can develop an effective content that establishes a brand as an authority in your industry, fostering trust among your audience. So we've touched on a couple of those points in the previous ones where we've talked about, you touched on consistency, understanding your values and your mission. But if you don't keep that, I guess, how do I say this? The trust and authority. There are certain things in your industry or your business's life cycle that you need to do a certain way to constantly keep top of mind and build that trust and authority. You can't just go off and randomly say, today I like something and I'm all for it. And then tomorrow you turn up and you say, you know what, I wasn't into that. I'm into this today, unless of course you're into that industry, which is all about trending, then maybe that's what you do. But still, I think you'd struggle. So please
But trending is not an industry. If you're into trends, that's your thing. And then
Yeah.
get into trends and position yourself as a trend follower or a trend scout.
That's right. Yeah. So us doing these live streams is an example for us of ways that we would get our voice out there and talk to people and let them know that we know what we're talking about and that we know that these things matter to branding and the exercise of branding. So we go about it this way, but your version might be something else. So you've got to look at whether the podcasting or websites, blogs, expos, whatever the channel is for you, you've got to think about it. We will talk about that later in another couple of slides, but just raising it early. So keep that in mind. Another one that flows on from building trust and authority is looking at where you can generate organic leads and conversions. So explore the strategies to organically attract and convert potential customers through your content. So a lot of clients that I work with, they overlook this one. They think they've got to sell, but sometimes you don't need to. Sometimes your audience are looking for a certain solution or a certain answer to a question. So create that content for them, and then they find you, and then they think, hang on, you guys know what you're talking about. What else do you do? and that leads to the opportunity for them to do business with you in other ways, or the way you want them to, but they found you through that other avenue that leads to what you do. So constantly think about the ways that you can attract people without having to pay the dollar to get it out there. So think about where you can position yourself to generate organic leads and leading to obviously conversions. The next part of this is enhancing your brand loyalty and advocacy. So look at ways you can execute a content strategy to turn satisfied customers into loyal advocates. So people who promote and love your brand. We'd all love someone with a big poster icon, the little icon guy there, and holding up a big heart and saying, hey, come here, look at this stuff. So word of mouth is one of the most powerful forms of marketing. And if you've got to that point where people are raving about your product or your service, then you've hit the gold.
So you have a strong brand for it. Absolutely.
Exactly right. Yeah. So you've got to look at ways that can you find a way to get people to talk about your brand for you on your behalf, and what tools can you give them to do that on your behalf. So we've talked about this in other episodes. We've gone into where building this kind of content and then giving it to the masses and letting them repurpose it or put it out there for you is a great format for letting brand loyalists do their thing for you. So it is the ultimate goal of all the brand exercises we're talking about today, is to get someone else to do that for you and do it in your voice, but using their voice is the ultimate goal, because we trust and like somebody who's having a great experience, or you like them and they're doing something that you would like to either emphasize with or join them in that process, whatever the case be. So give it some thought on how that can work for you. So, all right, moving to the next section. So now that we're putting out some great content, we need to look at the audience insights and the engagement. So we need to find out how we tap into their hearts and minds of the target audience and foster meaningful connection through the content. And one of the ways we go about doing this is conducting an in-depth audience research. So we look at techniques for gathering data on your audience, demographics, preferences, and behavior. Now, with the digital age, this we've talked about in other episodes as well, is it's right there. If you have a website, behind the scenes, there's Google Analytics. If you're using Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, whatever the medium of choice is, it's going to have the opportunity to see, are people liking it? Are they commenting on it? Are they clicking on the links and going to the website or the download that you're offering, whatever the case be? So you're going to have opportunity to see what kind of feedback you're getting from that content. And sometimes we've worked with clients where the content that was the most well-designed, most polished, best-looking content that we've ever made is the stuff that sometimes just gets crickets. And it's just them and talking authentically, and it's shaking, and they're walking through the park, and they're doing all this kind of stuff. It still gets the response that they want and gets the opportunity. So you've got to look at what works for you and your audience. Is your audience expecting polished, or are they expecting more real in live scenarios, or are they looking for instructional content? You've got to find your medium and your way to go about that and learn.
And the interesting part about this is that, like Chris mentioned, every single platform today is designed to give you the most empowering information needed for you to analyze. It's called data. So the insights on Facebook is at depth, and it's been there for a long, long time. In Instagram, depending on how your account, your profile is set up, you can have a professional or a simple non-professional. I think it's called creator. But either way, the professional one just gives you so much more depth of information about who checks your content at what time of the day, part of the world, which parts of the content receive peaks, where there were drop-offs, and you can dissect the things that work for you. And with that information as base, keep improving a little bit more every time you create a new batch of content. You keep in mind the insights and the data that you've analyzed of the previous cycle, and you go into the new one with that in mind and try to orient the segmentation and the production of that content to meet the people that you want to reach.
That's right. Speaking of the people you want to reach, leads nicely into the next slide, which is crafting audience personas. So If you can create detailed personas to humanize your content, make it easy to tailor the content and resonate with them, you're probably going to get a better response. So you should always be looking at ways that you can segment your audiences into different types and then create content that's relevant to those audience types. No matter what business you're in, you can instantly think of or visualize, Mary, Alan, Bob,
Yep.
Sarah, whoever it is. You
Yep.
can visualize
Yep.
them, and you can also then say, okay, they like this, they do this on the weekend, they've got 3 kids, they have a boy, they have a dog, they go fishing on the weekend, whatever it is. These things about them, so you can then look at content that might be relevant to your business and to them at the same time and bring the two together. So think about the crafting the audience and what personas they have and how they can help your business.
I want to quickly encourage everybody looking at this particular point to actually do what big companies do. And I speak from experience, having worked in a very, very large company that operates globally. The interesting part is that it had floors of marketing people just on retention, acquisition, but they nevertheless never lost the humanization part of the process. And we knew very well what 4 types of personas we were working with, because on every single floor in the marketing departments, the 4 personas were printed and put up on the wall. So we knew how to address John, how to address Sally, how to address Bob, how to address John, Jojo, George, whatever, because they had slight variances in each one of them, both physical, demographically, income-wise, their habits, and these things actually help you ingrain who you're talking to. Because if you see somebody every day on your wall, you're going to start ingraining that attitude of serving that person instead of just having a graph up in your head that tells you that they're available from 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 7 in the morning on the computer. It's a different thing to have that picture of a human in front of you. So just encouraging everybody to do an experiment with that and see what type of results you get from it.
Exactly, which leads to this next slide anyway, which is then you foster two-way communication. So if you can understand how you're engaging with your audience through feedback, comments, social interactions, you can build a stronger community around your brand. So those 4 that you were talking about, if you knew where they were hanging out, then you might jump onto those groups, you might hang out on those websites, whatever the scenario is, and you might see some comments and see how they react to it, and then use that content in a good way, not evil, in a way that you can get back to them and say, well, look, come over here because we've got content that solves that problem, whatever that answer is. And a common mistake a lot of businesses do communications that are just like, we're awesome, we're awesome, we're awesome. They just talk about themselves.
Yeah.
They don't ask questions, or they don't prompt people to respond to something so that they can get that feedback. And then you can tell them you're awesome after they've kind of said they've got a problem. But doing that first usually leads to poor engagement and interactions with your content. So look at ways of asking a question and find a way to empathize with your audience, and so that they want to respond, get a reaction from them. But it doesn't mean be controversial. Sometimes it can be just as simple as how you're feeling today, and people will respond. But make it relevant to your brand. Yep. All good. All right. So we'll move to the next slide here, which is talking about the strategic content types and the channels. So we're going to unveil the most effective content types and channels to maximize your brand reach and impact. And the thing about this is looking at content variety and multimedia. So we want to explore the power of diverse content formats, including blog posts, video, podcast, infographics, and more. And what's interesting about this is 10 years ago, it was limited what you could do, but we had the internet. Go 10 years further back from that, and it was a little bit less engaging. And then you go 10 years back from that, and all of a sudden you don't have the internet. And it was like we've talked in previous episodes, it was just you had your TV, print, word of mouth, radio, those kind of things. We don't have those 4 mediums, and some of those mediums are waning. But some of them are actually all digital now. So you've got to be mindful of the fact that your content and where it sits. And the beauty of things these days is if you create a video it goes onto YouTube. But then you can convert that content into then a blog post and make a blog out of it. And then from that blog, you can create an email, and the email can go out to people, so, and then from that, potentially you might have a download or a printable item that they can print off from just that one piece of content. So you can repurpose content in many ways, but you just need to think about what mediums work for you, because a lot of, again, coming back to the personas that we were talking about earlier, some people might be visual and audio. Some might be people that need to touch and feel. Some people need to physically be there in front of you to hear the answers being said. So you've got to be mindful of those personas and those audiences, and then choose the right channel for your audience. So it's something to consider when you're going about this content variety. Then you need to look at choosing those right distribution. I kind of jumped ahead of there. So you got to determine which platform is right for your audience and which they frequent most. So tailor that in a way that works for them. And then this is a really important one, is look at how you schedule your content and how you do it consistently. So you need to develop a content calendar to ensure the consistent flow of valuable content to your audience. Now, I work with content all the time with clients on the strategic side of it. And one of the easiest things I do with clients is look at their website and then look at the 4 or 5 sections of their website, and then go, for starters, if you're absolutely struggling, you have nothing you can do, look at Monday is that section, Tuesday that section, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? And so instantly they can just go to their website and grab some content and put it out there. But ultimately, you need to get better and better at creating new content, and you need to find ways to do that, because again, there's depends on your brand, but there's community content, there's the weather's content, there's news and events that are happening, there's all sorts of things like technology changes, as we talked about earlier. There's ways you can go about it. There's people's birthdays, achievements. There are so many ways you can create content these days, and you go.
What you're saying, Chris, is very relevant to content creation, because the more you exercise this muscle, the better content creator you become, and the better you understand your audience, the more you're going to be able to interweave a marketing message with the season, with the type of person, with the city, with whichever conditions and contexts you are releasing your content into. And the better you are able to interweave one into the other, the more appealing that content is going to traditionally be. So let's say you are starting the week and you have a food truck. Probably you want to emphasize that you want to start the week with a coffee or a sweet to get things going in the morning. Or if you are at the end of the week, maybe treat yourself to a warm plate of food, which is our specialty, whatnot. That speaks to the fact that it's the end of the week. People have had a hard time at work, and on the way home, they can pick up a specific dish. Or if it's a weekend, it's a barbecue time. You have a sauce that you want to advertise, something that ties into the event happening, to the underlying context of where your brand lives and how you can mesh your marketing services and products into people's lives. Traditionally, the better your content is going to perform. And once you do that, people really start paying attention, because you've shown you understand what the world looks like from their perspective. You see what life day to day for them is, and you are able to interweave your brand into their everyday living.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you can look at daily, weekly, monthly. You can look at annually and quarterly and seasonally. There's so many different types of content development that you could do, that you can schedule ahead of time, knowing it's going to happen, and just put it into place. So you don't have to scratch around too hard to find content. You just need to know where to look for it in your particular industry or business. So this leads to the little early giveaway that Sim had, which was consistency, the silent powerhouse. So how to maintain a consistent brand voice can be the secret sauce for building trust and recognition. So you need to define your brand voice and tone. You need to establish a clear guideline for how your brand voice and tone maintain a consistent identity across all content. So this is something that a lot of clients that we work with do badly. and then when they work through a session with us, when we talk about where this matters and where it does matter more than others, they then get better and better at it like a muscle. And you find that when they do it, it's like the best friend that just seems to be a rock for you, and you just want to trust them because they seem to always be consistently showing up. And that's what this leads to. So it's no use you being, I don't know, squeaky and annoying one day, and then
the next day you're sage and wise and very peaceful.
All those things. So yes, we talked about the archetypes last week. So
yes,
if you've understood who your archetype is, then you would apply that to this, so that you can go about doing that consistently and in a way that you do it. So look at the way your voice and tone can be changed. And the thing about this is that it's depending on, again, on your personal business and what type of business it is and things like that. These things can sometimes be decided for you because of the industry you're in or the type of business you are running. But whatever that is, you need to make sure it's done consistently. And we run sessions with our clients to work out what that is, and then we get them to apply it to their every touch point that they have. And generally, when they do it, the response is quite amazing when it's done properly. So think about the voice and tone and keeping it consistent. And this is where our friend loves talking about brand guidelines and style consistency, which we've touched on in another episode. So please create a style guide to ensure all your visual and messaging align with the brand's aesthetics and values. We can go into this, but please just check out other episodes where we've talked about this in detail, because it's a really, really important thing. But Sim, I will give you one chance if you want to say anything about this, why this is important.
It leverages the power of the creator of the brand. Basically, it consolidates with everybody who gets on board. It saves everybody time and just educates without the need for hand holding. So what this means is if a brand was set when the business existed with nothing but 2 people at the core of that business, and now it's getting to 10 people, the owners of the business don't have the time to go sit down for an entire week and explain the brand, tone of voice, graphics used, where to find logos, and how to put out content, because this has been documented already and crystallized into this brand guideline document, which makes everybody's time in the structure much more efficient. Not only this, it also becomes a sales tool or an exit power move if one day the business needs to be sold. This is a complete sideline, a footer note, but it also enhances the value of the business as a brand at the moment of a potential buyout in the future. Keep that in mind, business owners, because many times this is not even considered. But if you're able to hand over a turnkey solution to somebody picking up where you leave the business off, this gives you that much more value at the sale moment as well.
That's right. Well said. So as I said, there's plenty of detail. We can go further into that one, but we'll leave it for today. The other part of this is monitoring and adapting. So we've touched on this a little bit earlier, but you've got to learn to do this content consistently and adjust as your brand evolves. So with what you just said then, this is also where the guidelines being constantly updated and kept up to date with what's going on is important, because a brand in its infancy is going to talk a certain way because it has to educate and raise awareness of it. As people get to be more comfortable with your brand and know of it, and it's got that sort of awareness, you evolve to the next level of then keeping that brand that you've built and that awareness at a certain level. And then from there, the feedback and everything else we talked about starts to kick in, and you start to adapt and evolve your content based on that maturity of the knowledge of your brand. And I guess because it's out there, there's community feedback, and you now know that works, or there's so many brands out there that know that they've got a particular persona in the public's mind, and they play on that and they do things to do that. Or as people do come to us, they want to change that perception. So they want to go about it a certain way, but at least you know what that is and you look at ways of evolving it.
Correct. Like Chris said, a brand is a little bit like a person, and a person has its incubation period, the childhood period, the maturation period, teenage and adulthood. Nike doesn't need to explain anymore to anybody in the world what they do. In the 70s, they had to make it very clear that they were a runners oriented mostly brand. And then basketball came along with a huge move by hiring one of the biggest names in basketball ever to walk the earth. But today, Nike, like I mentioned, does not have to explain to anybody. So that part of the conversation, the education, has been left behind, way behind. 70s, 80s, that was it. It's well mature. It's a grown up. It's really well muscled, and everybody knows what Nike does. So they just go to Nike when they need high performance products, even for sports. Even if they're just the occasional weekend warrior, but they want to feel like an Olympic athlete. That's
And
Nike through and through. So there's
yeah,
no need to go back to basics and explain. We produce high quality sports produce that empowers your so on
yeah.
and so forth. You get the gist.
And the key with that evolution, by the way, they started out as a company. So you were a runner and you used Nike's shoes to run. These
Yeah.
days, Nike is associated with sport and high
Sport,
performance.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
not running anymore. It's across sporting in all fields, as long as it's
Yeah.
high performance. Okay, so get into some interesting stuff here. We're talking about creating and distributing killer content. So we're going to give you some tips on crafting engaging content and strategies to ensure that it reaches the right audience at the right time. And we've given a few hints out leading up to this slide. I'll probably get to the next slide. We're going to talk about the topic. And it's the storytelling technique. So we look at exploring the art of storytelling to captivate your audience and convey your brand's messages effectively. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a bedtime story, right? So
No.
it doesn't have to be a once upon a time, the prince was looking for a princess's shoe and Cinderella kind of stuff. It's not that kind of thing. It's understanding that your story, like with what you just talked about with Nike, that you sometimes can't tell everything at once. So you kind of have to look at the big picture and work out we've got lots of features and benefits and outcomes and emotions that somebody can have on the journey of using our product. So rather than do that in one big hit, we look at ways we can evolve the story and educate people, raise the awareness and get people to come back to use our product. So look at your product in a kind of chapter format and look at how you can create content over a period of time that evolves the process and educates, raises awareness. Again, understanding the goal of your content is important because that's what will lay out the steps you need to take to achieve that outcome. So keep that in mind when it comes. You go. See?
This can be as simple as, for example, if a financial product, if you were to ask a financial person what is it that their business does for people, he would respond in an analytical way. His brain and his everyday activities are conditioning the product based response. If you ask a marketer, a social media marketer, what is it that this brand does? Well, the story then is going to be because of using this product, family of John and Sally were able to raise their kids through blah, blah, blah period of their life, take them through school. And because they made a certain investment and put it in an allocated fund pension, they were able to reap the rewards later in life. This is a condensed version of two sides of the same reality, the bank reality and the marketing storytelling reality. So learn which things that you have that you offer and how to story tell them to the public in a way that is relevant to them. That's as simple as that.
Yeah, exactly. And when it comes to storytelling, we don't like to be told stories to be lied to. We like stories that have something we're going to learn, educate, be fulfilled identify with, all those sort of things. So just be mindful of what sort of story you're telling when you go about this process. So it's constantly overlooked. And if you're looking at that word SEO on the screen, you have no idea what that is. It's search engine optimization. Okay. It's basically when you type Google, you type a keyword and you're looking for something, it's what content pops up. So that's why the next section of this is and content optimization. So you need to understand the importance of optimizing your content for search engines to improve visibility and discoverability. Now, you have touched on it, a tool that we can use that people can go to, and they can type in the words that they want to be found for, and it will come up with a whole bunch of options that people have, and it'll give you the amount of words that are being searched for, how often, other words around it, all these kind of things. You should be aware of these things when you're creating your content, so that in your content you can actually drop those words into it, or you can create entire content around those words because you know that it's being searched for.
Simply for the purpose of being findable. SEO is exactly that, search engine optimization. When you look at your content from that perspective and you reverse engineer that, what your content should be doing is basically provide the answers for which questions are being actively searched for online. Hence why it's called search engine optimization. Because if somebody is looking for how to design a logo, we can reverse engineer that and give 5 steps to designing a logo in the content that we put out. And that's the approach that we're trying to focus on here. And for the purpose of giving you quick tips on those tools that Chris just mentioned, we're talking about the neilpatel.com Uber Suggest, which is an SEO geared search engine. It's going to give you a lot of keywords that are searched around an industry or topic, and then answerthepublic.com, which is visually very appealing to myself. I love this tool because if you type in the word, again, let's just use logo, it will give you entire hubs where from different questions stem from that are being searched online. What is a logo? How is a logo designed? Where do people find designers? All this sort of information aggregated to a central keyword, logo being the case, and it just populates with an incredible myriad of possibilities for content, which is why it just breaks it visually in a very efficient way. So keep these two tools in mind because they're immensely useful.
Yep. And I think you just turned off our little name badges. There they are. They're back.
There we go.
Cool. All right. So moving on to the next thing after search engine optimization. This is something we've touched on in other episodes as well, but look at influencer and partner collaborations. Discover how you can collaborate with influencers that can amplify your content, reach, and credibility. So this is a really interesting one because the type of influencer you get involved with and partner with can change your business overnight. Coming back to that one I talked about earlier, the reason why that brand Jewel got it wrong is because the people they employed that's what they were known for, is youth and lifestyle brand building, right? So of course they're going to go to their strengths and do that and do it very, very well. So you've got to be careful who you choose to partner with when it comes to influencers and partnerships. And when it comes to partnerships, it could be not maybe a competitor, but it could be someone in your industry, a supplier. It could be someone that
is a complementary service.
Yeah, it could be, or it could be totally not in your industry at all, but because you have to share the same audiences, you put something out together and you draw their audience to you and they draw their audience to you in another way. So, or to them, sorry. So you've got to look at ways that maybe you can get creative and create a synergy with someone that might actually have the same outcome that you have, and what content can you put out together, or where can you show up with them so that it looks like it's a collaboration which will build your brand.
And done in a non-competitive manner, obviously, as Chris just underlined. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So just think about who you might be able to collaborate with. And it's another great way of creating content that may get you in front of the audience as you're trying to approach. So you've done all this amazing work. We want to get you unlocking the success metrics. So we want to discover metrics that truly matter and how to measure them to success of your content strategy. So the first place to start with this is looking for key performance indicators. So you need to identify and track the relevant KPIs, such as, is it the amount of traffic you get to your website? Is it the amount of times they come to your website and convert? Is it the way they engage with something that you're doing? Or is it the way you retain your customers? And these are just some examples. Your KPIs are your KPIs, but you need to understand what it is when you put this content out is a good thing. Like, is it they buy something, download something, they like it, they engage it, they share it. Is it something that they go visit and make a purchase? Like, these are things you need to be aware of, because sometimes, and we worked with a client recently, a retail one, which we touched on, that they didn't know these things. But when we went to their website and found that one of their pages was the most visited pages, it was a specials page, knowing that they're looking for specials means that we knew that they were one step away from coming into the store, but they just wanted to know, is anything on special? Is anything offer? Is there a discount? Is there something they can get for a special price? Is there something that maybe down there they're aware of before they go into the store and they're going to make a quick purchase? But if you don't know this about your website, then you're not going to know that's what people are looking for. As a good example.
Absolutely. What Chris has just said can be summarized into measuring can only, or success can only happen once you start measuring. Because this client, like Chris mentioned, did not even have the awareness that that particular point of their website was receiving so many visitors, and therefore there was nothing to be done there from their perspective, because they were just not getting the sales. And they were putting the KPI tag on the sales at the end of the cycle when they were not feeding in the earlier parts of the process, the specials page, keeping that content rich, varied, and feeding into the sales, which then invalidated their assumption of KPI or success.
Exactly. Yeah. Understand those things, and you'll find that things will get a lot easier for you. Well, if you don't know how to do this, you need to look at the analytical tools and the data interpolations that you can get. So you need to learn how to use these tools to gain the insights from the data and make data-driven decisions for your content strategy. With that example, we talked about knowing that they want a sale is the end point, knowing that people visit a page. So what we were able to work out was that, we'll just use round numbers here, there were 1,000 people looking them up. Of those 1,000, they went to this particular section, and they found that 50% of them would want to go there. So that instantly knew that 50%. So if they got 10,000 people, then that might be 5,000 people. If they get 100,000, it would be 50,000. There was just this kind of correlation like that. But then the next step from that process was that they looked at a particular page. And that was another, I think 30% of them went there, and then the other 30% went looking for directions. So once you know that this data is starting to show that the behavior is some want to go straight to the special, some are looking you up to find you, you then look at what they're putting in front of them in that step process. And then that leads to, at the other end, the sale that you're getting, but at least you know where they came from to help that conversion. So keep these things in mind when you're talking about the journey of your customer. Like, it may not be an obvious straight line. It'd be fantastic if life worked that way.
Yes, absolutely not a straight line.
So again, we're not talking about remarketing today, but remarketing is a good example of a content strategy that you can apply, where if someone comes to a particular page on your website, they are then sort of shown other content when they're out there moving on from your website. They see other content that you know may lead them back, because you can say, without saying it, you don't say, hey, by the way, we saw you on our website. How about this? Like, you don't do it that way. But you just happen to show up, and then someone goes, actually, I was looking for that holiday in Hawaii, and now I'm getting Hawaii offers, and it was $100
and discounts.
Yeah. And now it's
clothes and Hawaiian surfboards.
Or there's particular Hawaiian shirts are now available at 50% off. Like, whatever that is, straight away you know that they've been interested in something, so you can put content in front of them that may entice them to take that next step, whatever that step may be. Buy tickets, buy the shirt, whatever the case be. So now you've done all this, we want you to think about looking at iterative improvement. So develop a process that continually improves based on data analysis, and refine the content strategy over time, because your target audience is going to change behaviors. They're going to have different life cycles. They're going to age as well. So, you know, if you had been around for 20 years, those guys were 20 when you started, they're now 40. They're now in midlife crisis scenario. So they might be buying motorbikes or, you know, race cars. I don't know. You know, you never know who they are, but, you know, there are people out there like this.
I felt that.
Anyway, thank you for your time today. We have had a great session here talking about content, and just want to quickly recover what we talked about. So we talked about understanding your brand essence and why that's important. We talked about the hidden goals of content strategy and understanding what they are so that you can make sure that you do it well. We looked at audience insight and engagement and understanding, the importance of getting those insights and looking at the engagement from that. We looked at strategic content types and channels, understanding where you're putting your content and what type of content where. And then the most important part of this whole process was doing it consistently so that they see you in the same light every time they see it. Then there's creating and distributing the content killer. And finally, we talked about the metrics. So moving on to that, I just want to recap. We've unraveled the essential elements of crafting a powerful content strategy that resonates with your audience while strengthening your brand identity. So our journey included defining the core essence of your brand, exploring the hidden goals, mastering the audience insights, and I guess this is what I just talked about in the last slide there. But armed with these insights, you are now equipped to elevate your brand voice, build trust, and make a lasting impact through the strategic creation and the distribution. So take it all on board. If you don't know where to go next, we'd love you to book a discovery session. Let us better understand your business and assess the state of your brand, the goals, and where you want your brand to be. Please visit us at brandion.agency, the brand guardianship, and book us in. We'd love to have a discovery session with you. Why do it or how it works is that we have broken into a 1, 2, 3 step where you book that call in. We look at your business, we assess it, we look at ways we can help you. Then we select a program that works for you because we understand one size doesn't fit all. So we look at ways that we can set our plans to your goals and find an outcome that works for you. And then we look at an onboarding process and an ongoing coaching scenario where we look at ways of you staying focused and amplifying your brand. And obviously, we would love to thank you for joining us today. Is there anything, Sim, you'd like to finish on with anyone that has watched us to this part?
Comments on what struggles have you felt with your brand and what successes you have? Because content is one of those things that it doesn't produce immediate results that you can tie directly into. But many a times have I experienced this myself and seen people around me experience the same, is that people have looked at the content of a brand for a long time. And one day they take action, simple as that. And
right.
For my wife's business, for example, it has happened many, many a times that people walk into the shop, but that wasn't the day that the decision was made. That wasn't the day that they knew the brand was there. They had followed the content for enough time, for long enough, that it just happened to be on their way with their family driving around, and they finally just made a turn, stopped at the shop, went in and looked at the products they were looking for so long online. It's, like I mentioned at the start, an organic, ongoing, non-aggressive, non-obtrusive way of keeping yourself top of mind of your audience.
Yep, and understanding your audience is the key to this. So I want people to take out of this is that it's generally not about yourself, it's about the audience. So constantly think about what they want and what they're expecting to see or want to know about, and make sure that they're seeing it so that when they are ready to make that decision, you're the brand that they think of going to. So keep that in mind and stay top of mind. And thank you again for joining us this week on another episode of Amplify Your Brand. And we look forward to seeing you next week. We have an exciting topic. We're not going to release it this time, but we're going to let you know during the week. So look out in the socials and find it there. Amplify Your Brand, guys. Take care.
Bye.